Sa dudes. Welcome back. Welcome back. Ah, yes. Another day, another dollar, another stream. Yes. This evening, spicy shit. Giants discovered in South America? Fuck. Was Uncle Jim right about the giants? I don't know. Probably bullshit, but we'll find out. What else we got going on? Religion and UFOs. Diane Pasulka was on Joe Rogan. So I've watched some of her videos before, so thought they'd be kind of fun to check out. And Canada pushes back. Think, fuck, as I live in Canada. Oh God, welcome everyone. Digi Divinormus, yeah, awesome to see you here, man. Welcome. And Finn, welcome. Finn, I want to watch your new video too, actually. I haven't had a chance yet. I saw it. I was scrolling while I was at work earlier, so yeah, to check that out as well. So, for everybody watching these VODs, thank you still. I see you watching. Please consider giving me a follow if you haven't followed me already. I'm trying to get to... I want to get to 300 followers. Fuck. That's been hard enough, so... I gotta clip some more shit. I've been posting these VODs on YouTube, so in the links, you can go to the links and stuff. People can watch it on YouTube if they want. So yeah, Mr. Mythos video. Oh fuck yeah, man! I have to pull that up here. Oh yes. Well, without further ado, to get to it, this is a little bit. There we go. That's better. There we go. Oh, there's my dog. Hey, buddy. Let's go. There we are. Down there. And let's go to some more peaceful music now that isn't as crazy. Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, I think that's good. That'll be the juggle if that day ever comes. That would be the juggle, right? To try and have it still be intimate. Because, yeah, I desperately don't want it to turn into some kind of like distant, like cold fucking, kind of like the big streamers chats are just like, it's like an entity in and of itself. It's a strange thing. So yeah, have to figure out some way to keep that, but I guess we'll worry about that if I ever have any kind of success with this, proper success. But yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, we're all opening up and decide here right now. Hell yeah. Oh, yes. So, what's going on here? I got a couple things up today. Oh, Jesus. More of this talk. I'll full screen this. Here we go. I just, as we see many of these globalist puppets lose control, who leading these Western democracies, I get more and more concerned that whoever, whatever, is behind the veil, right? If they're not going to, in some act of desperation, try and create some kind of like false flag event to kind of get the world back under their control a bit, because it seems to be completely fucking out of control lately. At least from the little snippet that I see, right? Which that's honestly all we really get to have is this little sliver, our perspective of things. But one thing I've been seeing lately, which is just fucking concerning, is this idea of conscription. And this was prompted, I should say, because I think Sweden was joining or has joined NATO. Probably to back Sweden's NATO bid, yeah. So that was potentially going to concern Russia, and they could take it like an act of provocation or something. And anyway, they just reminded the Swedes that, they could be conscripted if a war breaks out. And now this same rhetoric is going on. Could Britons face conscription in future? Right? So, it's just fucking, man. It's just a load. I saw so much bullshit. I mean, but, there's also a reality to that too, where it wasn't that long ago. We just had 2 world wars like 100 years ago. 100 years ago, it was 1924. So we had just come out of the First World War and we were just heading into the second one. So high time maybe. So yeah. Starting or speedrunning societal collapse in World War 3 in hopes of causing a complete collapse so they can rebuild it quickly versus a slow burn collapse which may not be recoverable. Yeah, man. Oh fuck. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's interesting. Enormous. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to. For me, it's like I don't know. It seems to be there was some intention, at least by the Western elites, which some people speculate may string pull like the entire planet. Who knows, right? But that they were trying to conglomerate like power, like they're trying to centralize it, right? They wanted this like kind of one world government kind of system. And I guess maybe that's just to, it was very rushed. If any of what we just went through had to do with some intentional, release of some things that maybe tried to precipitate that happening, it seemed just very, I don't know, didn't really work that well, I guess. Maybe that's a testament to like the human spirit pushing back against that kind of control, but who knows? It's one of those things like I get into woo all the time, like trying to look ahead and trying to figure out we're at such a disadvantage, right? If that's the case, if there's actually, and I think probably all of us, like myself, definitely, I'm imagining a much like tighter knit system of control, probably like the classic like Illuminati trope is that, there's like a puppet master and everybody's on a string and every single move is, in line with whatever his hand's doing. And that seems, it's probably a bit of a naive conception, I think. It's probably way messier than that. And there's probably power structures all over the world in different places, like, the Middle East, for instance, like the Saudis are extremely influential and powerful. The Asian countries, the Chinese, right? And the UK. And then the United States in and of itself is just like this crazy, rabid like monster, right? At least like militarily. So it's probably extremely complicated. But there's still, with all of that, seems to be this intention, I guess, maybe that we can kind of discern out of all of the noise that whoever they, and they is very loosely thrown around. But for me, it's like just, I think through the whole virus thing, the hand became much more revealed. I became much more convicted in saying that there definitely is some kind of intention here. Whether it's Klaus Schwab, I don't know. But yeah, their collapses, the sooner they can rebuild this society, and it's easier now. We have the resources currently versus decades from now when things aren't as easy. Colluding with billionaires and world leaders to bring it back. They're forcing control of AI and technology to grasp power of the collapse. Interesting, yeah. Yeah, well, man, that's the thing. Yeah, and at the WEF too, and that this is, yeah. I mean, I don't put a lot of stock in psychic, viewing, specifically psychic remote viewing, but it's interesting, I guess. Again, we may be at such a disadvantage going to the wizard, right, and asking for like a reading, right, and out of desperation is probably fine, right, as long as you don't like take that information to the bank. And rabbit welcome, yes. But there's been a couple people who are, I don't know if they're even convinced themselves, but fairly convicted that they are feeling some kind of intention behind what happened, and the intention was to control everyone. But I don't know, and I have my own intuitions on this as well, that there's many different schizo lines kind of leading to, I guess, where we are now. But in those narratives, I guess, it speaks of some kind of cataclysm, right? Who knows what will bring that? There's many different things, or it could just be just a collapse of society that they've just anticipated. So like the financial system is on a fucking, it's been on a timer for a while. And so that in and of itself imploding could cause quite a mess. And that's what some people are talking about here now. I had, where was it at? Oh, did I open it? Shit. I had, it was my Ed Dowd, actually. but they had heard that some of these major banks are now going to be working with some of these social media companies. This is like a leak because they're going to be watching for bank runs in the next like year, which is like, what do you guys know? Like, it's like, oh God, yeah. Yeah, man. Maybe sooner than later. It's hard to say, I guess. But yeah. Anyway, I mean, in one of the ways that I guess historically societies have gotten themselves out of messes like that is to get into wars. Start wars, get into wars, reorganize things. And that's the concern now is they're trying to, here in the West, start a war with Russia and China and everybody else. So, yeah. They know, yeah. I've heard that too. I'm not like involved in it really as much, but there are some figures. Ed Dowd was a fund manager, for BlackRock, and he's fairly knowledgeable in this. And it's not necessarily he's talking more about woke culture here, I think, right now, but we're being ruled by idiots. His conclusion. But yeah. Anyway. Very interesting perspective there. I'm going to probably jump around a little bit again, but hey, that's okay. What's going on here? So I'll talk about this. I talked about this last night a little bit, but for people in Canada, for anyone in any Western democracy right now, what happened in Canada during the trucker protest was a big fucking deal. What they did was fucked. So, and everybody knows what happened at this point, I'm sure. So I don't need to go and reiterate what exactly went on and what was declared, and that the government went into people's bank accounts and fucking, froze everything. And it just was a huge fucking breach of our Charter of Rights. And that has been confirmed now that, they did essentially break the law in declaring that. It's been deemed unjust, I guess, by a federal judge here in Canada. And so now they're going to try and contend it, but the backlash is just fierce, man. I was reading through Justin's posts on Twitter, his team posts, and like, it's just all negativity. I don't know who supports this guy. Probably just older people that just think he looks good, and he can't really speak very well. I guess it depends what you define as like well, right? Like he can speak kind of coherently, like a soliloquy, like an actor. But this is funny though. I've been watching Jordan Peterson dig into this. There was actually just a kind of a town hall meeting. Tucker Carlson came up to Calgary with the premier of Calgary and Jordan Peterson, and they sat down and had a conversation about what's going on in Canada and how appalled they are about it. But this is kind of funny. This is Canadians can't afford groceries or rent. 1 million foreigners are in line in front of us for universities and hospitals. Crime has doubled. I've never seen such a tone-deaf headline before, and since it's Susan Delacourt, it's the official Liberal Party message track. What are Canadians willing to sacrifice in the fight against climate change? The Canadian government's team of behavioral scientists is turning its attention from the pandemic to climate change, Susan writes. And I like Jordan said, I'm willing to sacrifice Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, hold on a second here, Stephen Gubeau, and then Chrystia Freeland. Yeah, I thought that was pretty fucking good. Yeah. I think we're all about ready there. Yeah. Oh man, I've been seeing that lately. I know. Oh god. Anyway, yeah. But yeah, very very tone deaf. Very interesting narrative here in that me and DM leaked this little podcast back like in the heat of the pandemic. We started this little thing, and I remember reading, it was a Time article. I thought it was the Atlantic, but it's a Time article, and it was back in 2020, I think, maybe towards the end of 2020 or 2021. But it was an article speculating about what the life is going to look like at the end of the pandemic, right? And they had this idea that everyone would be working from home, and we'd have our magical medicine that will kind of clean everything up, and But the interesting thing was halfway through the article, they go on about how, yeah, and now that the pandemic's over, the next great crisis of our age will strike. Climate change will land in the developed world. And it's like, okay, like just setting it up, right? Just setting up, this is the next thing. It's like, okay, like, well, how do you know that? Talk about droughts and famines, and I'm like, well, how do you know that's going to onset? And then, well, like, what? Like, and so this narrative constantly going from the pandemic to climate change. And it's interesting, in the World Health Organization, they've been screaming too, because people have been pushing it back against the bullshit they've been trying to pass, getting all these countries together and effectively giving up all of their rights to control the next pandemic, and they're going to give it to this like fucking organization run by billionaires. Anyway, one of the ways they can declare a crisis, a pandemic, isn't just from a virus circulating around the world. It's actually from climate change, which is one of the concerning parts of their little legislation they're putting forward. That they could effectively declare a crisis, like a lockdown, over anything. But the language used was that a climate crisis could cause mass lockdowns. And, you know, I just thought that was really interesting, because who knows? Maybe there is something they're anticipating, right? And I don't pretend to know exactly what that is, right? I don't know if it's Nibiru. I hope not, right? That wouldn't make a lot of sense to me, honestly. But, you know, that would be what they did in using those it would be a great way. If it was a much more serious thing, the lockdowns would be far more effective, I think. Fuck, this music's getting like intense again. Where's my peaceful music? But anyway, yeah. So again, constantly you see this narrative now. I mean, that's not necessarily surprising, because, you know, we've been hearing about this for like fucking, I don't know, well, 2 decades. I've been hearing about it since Al Gore, at least, right? And so, you know, I guess it's just kind of come to a head. And, you know, the climate hasn't shifted to the degree that, you know, any of them anticipated. And now other scientists from other disciplines, and even from climatology, are speaking out and saying this is like a fucking political, you know, scam, essentially. Like, this is not worthy of creating this kind of hysteria, like upending economies and stuff and industries, like the automotive industry, over like, you know, electric vehicles, and it's just fucking insanity. So anyway, I don't want to cover here now. There's a couple of things I was going to get. I'll get into this here in a second, which I thought was kind of interesting, which could maybe kind of tie into this. Well, I'm talking about political stuff. Maybe we'll just talk about this now, because I thought this was kind of interesting. I'm not going to watch like the video or anything. I didn't know who this guy was, actually. Brendan Kavanaugh. He's a piano player. He's got 2.28 million subscribers on YouTube. He's got a pretty big following, pretty big channel. And he's a piano player. He goes and plays out in public here. I think this is in London. He was playing out in public, and what happened was there was a group of Chinese nationals that approached him. And at first it was a friendly interaction, but then one of the guys started to get angry because he didn't like the fact they were being caught on camera. And Brendan kind of pushed back and said, well, you know, we videotape people here. This is in public. Like, if you don't like it, like, leave, right? Like, we're still going to take a video. It's hard not to get someone in shot sometimes. And he was pushing back. And supposedly what happened in the end, well, the police came and tried to disperse everyone. But supposedly these people here were potentially a little bit more involved with the Chinese Communist Party, right? They weren't just celebrating the new year. There was supposedly a bit more going on here. And the rumor is that, and I think it may be more than a rumor now, the reason that the gentleman, and I don't think something is in frame here, didn't want to be caught on camera is because, you know, they were agents. And Brendan was kind of bad-mouthing the government in China and saying, well, this isn't a communist place, guys. We can videotape in public, and if you don't like it, you can leave, right? And anyway, just kind of and supposedly the Chinese government now has stepped in to this matter, and they're trying to get these videos that he's making taken off of YouTube, because what's happening is, there's been a lot of negative press in regards to this, and now subsequently, because they've been trying to get these videos taken down, there's even more negativity towards the Chinese government. And it's was interesting to watch the interaction. It didn't last for very long, but these people, some of them like kids, literally probably in their early 20s, late teens. It's hard to tell sometimes with people. I have a hard time telling, but just literally brainwashed, right? As to maybe how bad things are there, right? And I encountered this myself, although I encountered a group of people from China who want to get the fuck out of there, right, as soon as possible. But just this brainwashing in these other cultures, and it's such an oppressive force. Honestly, what are a small group of people going to do to fight back against that? They're just going to acquiesce to it. And I'm sure now they may be in trouble with the government. Their social credit fucking score is probably tanked down to literally zero. So, yeah, they'll go and spread them online. Yes, man, that's fucking what we need to do. I don't know. So anyway, so this was the live stream that he had. It's got almost 7 million views now. He's been all over the place. I think he was on. Who was he on recently? He was on, Piers Morgan had him on, Piano Man. It's just anyway, because I give Dave the fallout. Now they've cordoned off the piano, as you can see here, in London, where he would do a lot of his videos, and people are like, well, is this pressure from the CCP, right? And people forget that country, unfortunately, the people aren't, but the country, the government there, are not our friends, right? And they do not have our best interest in mind, and they have a lot of investments all over the world, and they actually own a large portion of the United States debt. So it's complicated shit, and they can still exert their influence even in our free and open Western democracies. So just a harsh reminder, I guess, for Brendan, that you start calling out, these types of governments, they can still come for you, even here. And I've heard stories of people, even in Canada, who left China to come here, right? And these are, some more accredited people, let's say. And they weren't fond of what was going on. They were, let's say, advocating maybe for a toppling of the government. And what happened was there were agents that were living in Canada that came and visited them at their house and also at their workplaces. And it turned out after the fact that there's a whole ring going on in Canada of these fucking CCP police stations that were in Canada. And what they were doing is you were going around harassing nationals who had immigrated here, just to remind them, listen, we're still keeping tabs on you. We want to make sure you're not talking too much shit. And it's holy fuck. Craziness, man. Yeah. And they're out there, unfortunately. And there are clearly portions of that population that are unfortunately kind of probably what goes on in North Korea, just fucking brainwashed. So an interaction with some people here from China that was ended up being very negative, and has led to this gentleman's kind of whole meme being kind of disrupted as they've cordoned off the piano he would usually play in public on. So, fuck, man. Anyway, this shit just drives me fucking nuts. Talking about fucking UFOs. This is why I want the A's to come down. I want them to come. Just get a list of people, right? Who's been naughty, who's been nice, right? We kind of like Christmas, but they'll go around and they'll find the good people, and then they'll just be like, you guys want to get the fuck out of here? And I'll be like, yes, let's go. We'll go pick everybody up, right? and we'll just get the fuck out of here, right? And we'll go live in the Sky City or something, and then we'll just watch everything else just catch on fire and burn. Yeah. Maybe a trip to Hong Kong in my futures. Yeah, oh yeah, did you? Yes, yeah. Well, listen, man, fuck yeah. And listen, it's a shame, and I've known many people from the area, let's say, who are just so heartbroken at the situation there. And I love Chinese cuisine, actually. Szechuan, like hot fucking Szechuan fucking recipes and shit. Like I followed a guy for years. His name's Trevor James. I think he's still alive. Trevor James, called the Food Ranger. He's from Canada, and he there he is with his wife there, and he can speak, I think it's Cantonese, like immaculately. And part of his meme is he would go around China and then speak Cantonese to people. I think it's Cantonese, like, and he would freak people out in China. They'd be like, "What the fuck?" Is like, Westerners don't normally speak the language that well, but this guy was an exception. And anyway, it's such a beautiful people, beautiful culture. It's just the fucking government there again, a bunch of imbeciles running that place, running it into the fucking ground, honestly. So anyway, but yeah, a damn shame. Yeah. Oh, do you do hot pots? Fuck yeah, man. Yeah. Oh, so many. Yeah. I've had one once. Not like a Szechuan hot pot, like with the fucking, the numbing peppercorns and shit. But, oh yeah, man. Yeah. I've seen the similar Japanese, they freak out. Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a meme. Yeah. Where when you have like a white person who actually decides to enrich themselves in another culture and actually properly learn the language. Right. At least like the Asian dialects, because they're so much more difficult to grasp. Like it's like, oh, I can speak French or Spanish or Italian. It's like, it's all fucking based off Latin. Like, I mean, really, it's not that different. But then you go and you try to learn Japanese, fucking good luck with that. My brother tried to learn Japanese, and I remember he had a book, and I was reading through, I was like, what the fuck? Like, it's not even the same thing. Like, yeah, it's just nuts. Anyway, yeah, there's a guy in New York City who does a few languages, the same reaction. People, they freak out. He speaks well. I always wanted to be able to do that. And when I was in high school, my senior year in high school, like I'd pretty much just fucking given up. So I went to my principal at the time, who was a funny guy, and I just said, hey, listen, like, can I do like a music thing? Can I write an album? And for my first period, can I just like stay at home and work on my album? And he was like, go talk to the music teacher. But sure, bud. And I was like, oh, fuck, all right. And then he said, oh, by the way, we've got some students coming in from China. Would you mind tutoring one of them? I was like, yeah. And I went and grabbed some buddies of mine. And so then my period after that, essentially after that, was me tutoring this guy from China. And the guy that I got paired up with happened to just play guitar. So it's just the morning back in those days when the last year of high school was just me playing guitar all fucking morning, which is great. But I remember his name was Alan, and he tried to teach me Chinese. And I'm forgetting, maybe Digi, your partner would know, but the main language in China, Mandarin. Yeah, sorry. It's Mandarin. And Trevor's speaking Mandarin as well. Yeah. He tried to teach me Mandarin, and I was like, fuck, man, I can't fucking do it. Like because we didn't really do a whole lot else. The other guys just played StarCraft on their laptops. And there was another guy, and he just like fucked off somewhere with whoever he was with. And then me and Alan were playing guitar, and then it was Alan trying to teach me fucking Mandarin. And I was like, man, like, no, this is fucking, I don't remember one tiny scrap of it. And this is like, what, 4 months or more of this? Anyway, I couldn't learn French either. So that gives you fucking an idea of how poorly my brain digests any other language than English. So, I can count to 10 in Canto, 11 upwards is hard. Mandarin is mainland China, poor people Chinese. Oh, is that what it is? Okay. Cantonese has more tones. It's more of a scholarly dialect, so I'm told. The Mandalorian. Fuck, there you go. God damn it. Isn't it poor people China? Okay. They were all rich as fuck, man. All those guys that came over, like Alan's mom was one of the top people on the Olympics committee, because this is back in 2008 when the Olympics were in China. And the other two guys, actually, they brought laptops over, and Alienware hadn't come out yet, but it was some like fucking like high-end fucking gaming computer, and something happened with them, and then they just called their dads, and he just wired the money, and they went and got brand new ones. Instantly, I was like, holy fuck, like, you know, like thousands of dollars. I was like, what the fuck? Like, they're all wearing like Gucci and shit. I was like, what the fuck? Like, it was funny. Yeah. Oh, interesting. There are tons of languages all over rural China. Mandarin is like the common one. Okay. Cantonese more Hong Kong, rich areas. Okay. Yeah. Racing driver speaks 6 languages. Holy shit. Yeah, that's an impressive feat. I've met a couple people who speak quite a few. I knew a girl who was from Brazil, and she could speak Portuguese, Spanish, English, I think French, and I think it was like some other weird one, like German or something. But yeah, I don't know how the fuck you'd manage all that. Like, that's too much for me personally. Yeah. Yes. Oh, this is something I want to. This is something I wanted to go over here. Enigma Labs. So Enigma Labs is this like reporting agency, I guess. We covered them before on here. Where's the link to their website? Oh, right here. So the trusted destination for UAP sightings. They've got the fucking app and everything, right? So this is kind of interesting. I don't even know who this is. Co-founder, Google AI. Anyway, if you see this space-time anomaly, please immediately report it to us. And then a funny enigma. Submit any space-time anomalies and we will look into them. It's funny that we've come to this place now where people are just like openly like, yeah, there's maybe weird stuff going on. And if this happens, report it, right? If you see something, say something, right? Even if it's strange. It's a good shift, right? Because I remember even growing up I guess, as many of us have, a time, and then hearkening back to these other times back in like the 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, where if someone had saw something strange like this, they wouldn't be encouraged to report it. They'd be encouraged by everyone to just downplay it and try and create some mundane explanation to explain it away. But we've shifted our perspective here, where now people, probably with technology, phones and whatnot, have encouraged people to, document these things now, right? Because so much of it has happened, we're trying to get better data to corroborate, how legitimate all this is. And but now people are encouraged to report these kinds of things. And I think just the shift in that narrative alone may be enough to really kind of push this forward, at least within some of these other circles, like academic circles maybe. But anyway, I thought that was kind of fucking, it was funny to see. I'm not. There was something with Enigma Labs recently though, like I don't know if someone was like there was some kind of drama with them, and it was something to do with like who owns them and who funds them. I think it may be they may get funding from the government. If that might not be correct, if anyone's listening knows, but interesting though. Another interesting thing. So this is Representative Luna and Tim Burchett. Here's part of today's YouTube post with Tim Burchett and Luna discussing next steps in the UAP investigation, including field hearings with a mention of recent jellyfish UFO videos. So I thought I'd play this. The jellyfish thing has gotten more pushback, I believe. But I haven't seen anyone properly debunk it yet. I've seen people repost the balloon. It's funny how little research, like just people do in regards to like, if you're going to make a post publicly and you're like a fairly big name in like the sphere, and you're going to say, oh, this has been debunked, it's been figured out, here are the balloons, and you can't even fucking Google image search the balloons to see if they're actually real balloons. Like, the first thing that comes up, I think, is the Metabunk fucking forum post where the guy says, I made this in Blender, it could look like this. It's like, Jesus Christ. And then, you know, I saw somebody post about like, you know, oh, well, it's been debunked, it was just balloons. It's like, holy fuck. Like, it's craziness. Me, welcome, man. I'll play this. Like, I want to see this. I haven't seen it.
A UFO every time we're together or something, and where it's out, I always get 1 million hits on X or Twitter or whatever. You know, what about this? What about this? What do you think the future is, or where are we going with it?
So let me I'm going to toot your horn here for a minute. So Representative Burchett has been leading out this effort, and when I got into Congress, you know, it's very hard to find a true believer that believes in it for the right reasons, wants to genuinely, I think, bring the truth out there and expose it to the American people. He's one of them, so don't ever doubt that. So much so that, you know, he's ruffled a few feathers up here and people have kind of put him in their sights. So make sure that you back him, if you know what I mean. But what I will say is that you have been largely the reason why we've been able to have these hearings. So we're actually going to be coordinating, you're leading it out, location for the next field hearing. And I say that because I think it's time, based on our last session that we had with members of oversight, and what we were able to conclude is that, you know, we've brought in credible witnesses, they were telling the truth, and so it's time to move on to the next location.
Good. I would just hope we'd have some disclosure. You know, this is 1947. They've told us they don't exist, but yet we find out they spend tens of millions, maybe billions. I don't know. Pentagon loses a half $1 trillion, and I just think we need some disclosure. What the heck are they?
Well,
and what are they studying? And if they don't exist, then why are they using this money?
All blue balled believers. I'm curious as to like what the fuck they heard out of the recent, closed hearing that they had, you know, and what came of that. Because we had watched that video, the videos of them coming out, and I think clearly some things were disclosed to them. So just still waiting for that to drip out properly. It hasn't dripped enough for me yet. Oh, Galen TV, welcome.
Well, and we know that also too, just like based on what we've been able to see evidence-wise. But I mean, talk about for a second the amount of people that have come up to you in office
it
that
is.
Have told you, but they don't want to.
Maybe telling.
Just last week, I was on before our double secret hearing. I was in the gym that morning, and I get a phone call from a member, and they said, "Hey, are you watching what's on television right now?" And it was another sighting somewhere. And I said, I'd seen it a while back. I don't get too jacked up on that anymore. And he goes, then he went into explaining how when he was a young man in the military that he'd had a sighting, and he was very specific.
Yeah.
And talked about the officer that was in charge of the boat had said, this is what was going on, and they discussed it, and they, were basically, I guess, told not to discuss it anymore. And then he was in the hearing with us. I thought that was pretty cool. So we've, but it's just every day it just seems another member of Congress. And so, let's just find out what they're spending the money on. Find out what
they're spending the money on, but also too, I mean, you saw recently there was that footage of, the jellyfish UAP, and you see that and you just realize, okay, not only does that look creepy, but what is it? And so I think that these are important questions that we need to continue to ask.
This is over a military base.
Over a military base, and the individual that recorded it was looking at it through night vision goggles, but then wasn't able to see it unless he turned on his thermal FLIR. Yeah, FLIR. So, I mean, it's been interesting, but I will continue to support you on that effort, and I'm excited because as you're seeing, the more that we're doing these interviews, our group has expanded. So we had 16 members in there last time, so it's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Yeah. That's a good start.
They try to say we were crazy.
Yeah.
Fuck, Tim is such a daddy, though. I mean, he has that energy. We need it now. We need it now. God damn it. Yeah, I know what the jellyfish is, but I know one thing. Jeremy's made a fucking killing off of it. I haven't gone to his fucking... Where's his fucking... Jeremy Corbell. Where? Oh my god, he's got some fucking name. Jeremy Clarkson Renner. Oh, fucking Christ. Where is he? It's like Jeremy Canyon Corbell or something. Oh, for fuck's sakes. Anyway, I tried. I was going to see if he posted anything else in regards to all that stuff, but yeah, I'm curious as to what happened in the closed hearings, honestly. We kind of went over that already. Oh, yes. Here we go. Finn's video. I'm excited to watch this. This is Finn's... No, I'll mute the music here in a second. This is Finn's latest animation. We're closely with Max from Texas. This huge triangle UFO, like so many others, got incredibly close to the witness on a busy road at night. We're planning to do a video interview in the future. Oh, fuck yeah, man. Yeah, as I've mentioned before, I love these videos so much. And I love hearing about, like everyone else here, I think, these firsthand accounts of people encountering these objects and how trippy some of them are. And, you know, again, like, I'm not a scientist, so I'm very much invested in the human element here of this. And I just, you know, it's because, you know, although people can sometimes, you know, exaggerate things, maybe sometimes they can miss things, you know, a person of sound mind doesn't just concoct something like this. And hallucinations don't happen like this either, right? So it's just extremely powerful. And it kind of highlights these incidents, highlight the subjective element to this phenomena, which is strange, right? In that it's almost like a personal... there is this personal element to it. There's a subjective element to people viewing these things sometimes, where even, you know, in a group of people maybe, or two people will see things differently, but like very differently. And I've heard accounts of this as well, right? And it could maybe highlight that the phenomena is targeting certain people, which is just, you know, it isn't crazy. I was going to say it's like, objectively that's crazy, but it's just very telling, I think, of what we might be dealing with here. Is just very, very advanced. So anyway, let's get into it. I'm very excited to watch this. Let's fucking do it. Oh, there's Finn there. Fucking donate to him, everybody. 2008, San Antonio, Texas. 18-year-old Max and his two friends are on their way to a party. It's in a whole way there. Fuck yeah. Just some young lads. Nice touch. Going by. Hail the mullet. Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah.
Guys, look. It's a UFO.
Oh, man. It's crazy because, like, man, all these other people would have saw this. Holy fuck. Or at least... And everything's... So everything slows down. Oh, man. Yeah, this is awesome, yeah. Holy.
We gotta get out of here.
Holy holy man, like that's fucking yeah, fuck yeah. You know, the cars around him slowed down as it came directly overhead. Whoa, man, like, oh, that is just like, and you know, I should say like that what gives me anxiety more than even the encounter of something like that is the fact for some people nothing ever happens again. Some people that they are just left with this happening once and then nothing happens again afterwards, and that would give me terrible anxiety. Because then you'd just be like, your whole life would be, and I've seen people, interviews with people over the years where this happened, where there was just one crazy encounter and then that just defined their whole life. And like, I desperately wouldn't want that to happen. Oh God, you know, it's just like, fuck. And also, you know, it definitely plays on some people psychologically too. It can sometimes be kind of negative. Like there was that guy that was on the missing 411 video, the hunting video, where he had shot his rifle and it hit this like invisible cube, and this wacky guy came out and then said, "Hey, do you want to come in? Are you hungry?" And he's like, yeah, okay. And he just went in, I think kind of against his will, if I recall the fucking the interview with him. And then they were checking him over, and then they told him while he was flying away with them that, oh, he wasn't right. And they brought him back, and they scanned him. And when he went to the hospital after, they had found that the scarring that he had in his lungs from I think it was a pneumonia or something, had been all healed, which was what made the story extremely interesting. Because, again, this guy's testimony, coupled with the fact that the scarring in his lungs being healed, being impossible, maybe lent to the validity to the story. But you know, that he just had that singular incident and then he just went back to business as usual. And it's like, okay, like, fuck, man, like, yeah. I've been speaking to him daily for the last 2 weeks. The morphing of the skin of the craft is a detail many report. That's interesting, huh? Like, here it is here. If it's like some kind of field around it or something, huh? Yeah. Yeah, that's a fish fuel and they're thrown back. That must be it. That's literally it, though, isn't it, Digi? Some encounter with some advanced intelligence in some other plane, some other literal, almost some other dimension, right? That they've never experienced and will never experience again, right? Probably very similar. That's a really good analogy, actually. That's probably literally it, huh? Fuck, like it's funny, like, you know, man, like these things,
it's
like
UFO.
They almost, it gives me anxiety almost, man. Like just seeing, I would love to have a conscious encounter like this, but then again, if it only happened once, then I'd want to have it. Did they? I know they mentioned you mentioned your post there, they may do a talk with you. Did they have any other encounters afterwards? Yeah. As if it's the craft was alive. He's joking that it's UFO because it was a bright star. Okay. And then boom. Oh. He summoned it. He called it. I've got Train Beast messaging me here. I'm wondering why. Why he's not watching. Just a second here. Oh, come on now.
We gotta get out of here.
Oh Lord. Yeah, there's something like that. I'm definitely going with them. Fuck yeah. Well, that's why we got to do the CE5. We've got to do the CE5. We got to do the CE5 sometime, and we got to see if we can summon something like this. Aren't the black triangles, though, Finn, you would know this, in UFO lore usually, is it like, maybe not recalling this properly, but like there's like a negative connotation to them or something? There's sometimes, it wasn't that a thing or something? Like some schizo person had said like it was reptilians or something flying in the triangles. That stuck in the back of my mind, and is some tidbit of information for some reason I've carried forward. It was probably Alex Collier I was probably too inebriated watching one of his lectures, and then that is what imprinted in the back of my brain. Oh well. Yeah, he lost touch with 2 friends since they were 18 at the time. They've gone their separate ways since then. Oh really? Oh man, fuck. That is fuck. Yeah. The tourists, they say, there we go. Back on. When they say conducted by the majority are very close encounters like this on roads at night. Very just. I mean, you know, it would almost kind of make sense though, if, you know, whoever's flying these tend to get up close and personal. That when you get up close and personal with the UFO, it must probably be a black triangle. Whoever's behind this craft, right? The discs don't seem to be as interested. the little discs don't seem to be as interested in giving people anything, right? But yeah, very interesting. I can't view the fucking reptilian, yeah. The black triangle sightings hover the treetops height. It's rare if they're further away, they always come stupidly close. It's a conundrum too, because, you know, through a lot of the anecdotal stuff, you know, in regards to the abduction phenomena, a lot of it is like buried in people's minds, like intentionally buried, like in their subconscious. And it's weird how then we'll have just conscious encounters happen. And maybe that breaks this whole like narrative I've suggested, like that there's like some government involved. And that's not even something that I just pull out of my ass. It's something again from the woo literature, that there's a government governing interactions, but it's like, are they just like not... Are they not paying attention to these guys who are just like fucking like hovering right over the top of you for like a couple minutes? You're like, like the fuck is going on? Like, and then other instances you have like Betty and Barney Hill, where they technically didn't remember anything until they went and got hypnotically regressed, and then it all flooded back to them. And it took a lot of work for Betty, and Barney was unable really to figure out what had happened ever, because he didn't have the courage to face it honestly, I think. Before Betty was able to kind of discern what actually had happened. So maybe it's just different techniques from different visitors. I don't know. Yeah. Max said it was a bit smaller than a football field. God, Jesus, like. The crazy thing, too, is you'd imagine there would be other people on the road who would have fucking saw this, right? But then maybe they didn't, right? And that's a weird thing where, again, depending on how, like, schizo this is, it depends on how advanced they are, because the more advanced these beings are going to be, the stranger things are going to appear to us, right? Some of the stuff they might be able to do. To where, like, if they can... make themselves appear to only the people they want to see them, right? So, and that could be, and now we know, we do know that we can play around with our consciousness through hypnosis, right? And this happens with people who do magic, but kind of I guess they'd be called illusionists, but they can hypnotize people to not see other people right in front of them in the room. And so depending on how advanced these visitors are, maybe they can literally target 3 people or a group of people and show themselves to them, but everyone else around them doesn't get to see them. And like that gets into the, I mean, it's interesting because that conversation gets into the nature of consciousness a little bit, and our consciousness, and those little tidbits of information sometimes I think are lost on people from other disciplines who are approaching this, where they're forgetting how malleable our consciousness is, and that, you know, we wouldn't just be dealing with nuts and bolts here, right? I mean, we'd be dealing with entities, let's say, or, you know, beings that would probably exploit those weaknesses in us if it meant that, you know, maybe wouldn't set us off, or, you know, or just because they can. And that makes us feel very vulnerable. obviously. You know, they're like this, literally all of them are like these deus deceptors that can just kind of manipulate our consciousness whenever they want from a distance, right? I mean, talk about making someone feel crazy. You know, some guy sitting in his basement after maybe he took too many tabs of acid starts seeing these strange creatures walking around his room, telling him to go and burn his house down. And then he goes to the other humans and he's like, oh, well, like, oh, these beings are telling me to burn the house down. And it's like, oh, get him on the drugs. It's like, you know, because and I'm not a fucking psychiatrist here, but I don't know if there's any obvious. Now, there are some telltale signs. Maybe you run someone through an MRI if they're schizophrenic, but I don't know how obvious that is, if in some cases it is at all. So then some of these reports might be a little bit more valuable to people contending with this in the UFO field, right? Yeah. It was an illusion. I'll be able to see through lights and middle light images or draws. Drug will make sense. Just shooting thoughts or cloaking. Can't see behind or above the triangle. Yeah, it's interesting, man. Well, that's the thing about illusion, though. I guess just talking about that. It may be an illusion to them, but it may be an actual physical thing. The illusion may be no one else on the road seeing it but them, which is another way of looking at it, maybe. Other cars slow down, so I think they did. So the question is, why didn't they report the press? Oh, so they all slowed down, not because of the craft, but because they saw the craft. Okay. Well, the Max didn't report it, so why would others expect to report it when the witness didn't report it? It's a common thing many witnesses say. They were surprised nobody else reported it, but the witness didn't report it either. Yeah, holy fuck, man. Like, why? I guess maybe not familiar with ufology, though. Maybe. Like, was he not familiar with MUFON? Like, just like, who do I tell about this? It's like, you know, it's like, who do I tell? It's like, we saw this craft. Man, in all these instances, even with yours, Finn, it's like, I would be going and tracking down an accredited, like, hypnotherapist, like, find some psychologist who specialized in hypnotherapy, and do a session with them. And walk through that night and just see what else comes up. Because I again, so many people who have gone in and become abductees, right, have done the hypnosis, have dug up like some other shit. You may have had some very enlightening conversations, right, with some very advanced beings you might not remember. Same with these guys, right? Who knows? In this very short time, it's trippy because in some of these accounts, it's like instantaneous. And they have a conversation with these beings for like 30, 40 minutes, even longer, in like what appeared to them to be like almost a moment. And it's just, again, how wacky do things get if you're dealing with beings that are a million years ahead of us? Or more. Or even a little bit less. Even fucking 2,000 years ahead of us. Who knows what the fuck we'll be doing, right? Like, who do you tell without looking like the town nutcase? That's the thing, though, man. That's the thing. Well, nowadays you scream it at the top of your lungs, right? But I guess, you know, back in 2008, right? So I would have been 18 then. I don't know. Well, actually, you go to abovetopsecret.com or Godlike Productions and you talk about it there. And then everybody fucking is like, holy shit, fuck yeah. And like, then you feel like some god for a little bit as your thread blows up. That's what I remember. The report begins with them. It's like a ghost sighting. They don't realize there's this whole thing called disclosures. They don't realize we need as many people to report these sightings as possible. Yeah, I very nearly didn't report my 2008 close encounter. Only after I did others report their similar sightings to the same newspaper. Yeah, I remember you telling me that. Yeah. It's like someone has to take the lead first, right? Have the courage to like be honest about what they actually encountered, and then other people will follow. Yeah, it's a very disorienting thing, and it is for people that aren't acquainted with thinking about these kinds of strange things, the implications of them. It can be very unnerving. I'm sure they were probably pretty unnerved by all this because, you know, most people have heard the stories of getting abducted, right? So the craft flies over your head, and then afterwards you're thinking, like, what the fuck happened? Like, did anything else happen? I can't remember. And it can be very maddening as well, right? Like, legitimately drive people up off the wall like complete fucking banana balls, right? Like, last time factor 2, like, okay, last time, but what happened during the last time? Yeah. And that's the thing, Hendrix, as I've read over the years, I mean, not all of them had lost time involved with some of the instances. I can't remember if this was one of John Mack's people, but that it wasn't even, there wasn't even any lost time. But going through the memory, it was almost in an instant they were just picked up and then spoken with for an extended period of time. I can't remember, it's between like 30 minutes and an hour, and then almost instantaneously put back into the moment. And then they were unaware anything had even happened. Right? And then this is how crazy it's like, you wouldn't want to go tell fucking your psychiatrist about something. Well, you might fucking want to, though. That's a whole bunch of fucking am I saying here. But I'm just saying, like, it sounds, the whole thing just sounds to us like fucking schizophrenia, which is why over the years, having dealt with some people who were deeply schizophrenic, saying some strange things. And, I was kind of referencing that encounter. An ex-girlfriend of mine, her brother again, had taken too many drugs and kind of cooked his noodle, left his noodle in the water a little bit too long, right? And the consequence of that was he was just completely out of it and was seeing what he described as demonic forces coming to him at night in the basement and telling him to harm his family. But the weird thing with that, I should say, is that what coincided with those visitations, which was a red flag to me, was weird stuff happening in the house too. So, like stuff moving around, stuff flying off the walls, falling off the walls, probably a more apt way of putting it. And it just makes one wonder, right? It makes one wonder a little bit, where it's like, did this guy cook his fucking noodle? Yeah, clearly. What did that allow him to see? Right? It's like, again, now we're starting to experiment with psychedelic substances properly, right? In labs, like they're using DMT intravenously. But what do you do when you take these substances to your brain excessively? And is there something that gets shifted that might allow you to encounter things consciously you otherwise wouldn't be able to see, right? Like a threshold, yeah. And so then did he, and this is obviously, you never want to say this to fucking someone who's having a schizophrenic episode, is, well, bud, maybe those things were actually in your room. And it's like, what? It's like, well, because I think when people see these things, I remember when he was reiterating this to my ex-girlfriend, it was like it was almost like he was saying this, but like a part of him was like maybe hoping it was just a hallucination, but then going and confirming that and being like, they probably were in there with you, bud. It's like, no. That guy's just gone after that, right? He's like, no. It's like, but literally though, really though, we have to consider potentially they may have been. Because it's like, you have to take this stuff into account. And again, a lot of people, and this is in the realm of psychology and psychiatry, which I'm not within, but listen, I like metaphysics, right? Philosophy. I'm a metaphysician. We can't discount that possibility, honestly. So, which is very disturbing. Because there's a lot of people that recount, and it's probably, statistically, I'm sure most of them are probably just hallucinations, but maybe some of them aren't. It's probably a lost time. Oh, sorry. Well, if they do operate outside of time, then it makes sense. Yeah, like on Close Encounters, when they released the people, they gathered among them are the pilots from Flight 19 who should have looked 30 years older as they vanished in 1945, but they still looked the way they were 30 years old. Yes, I remember that. Yeah. Well, and and it's, how wacky does it get? How wacky does it all get? That's wacky enough for us, though. That's the thing. It's like, that would be enough to cause mass panic if that was something, because, we have to, we'll speculate further. If the government has been involved with these visitors at some point, or acquainted with information maybe that would corroborate this, so if they knew for a fact that this was actually happening, right? These kinds of things, and they knew potentially as well that like maybe these beings who aren't all positive were engaging with people in some way. It's again that very uncomfortable potential reality that like they're in the room with you, and maybe they are from, I'm not going to say religious story, but folklore. This would be a better way of putting it, around the world, as we had covered here, being these kind of sometimes dark forces influencing humanity, kind of from the shadows. That would be beyond an ontological shock, I think. They talk about catastrophic disclosure. That would be apocalyptic disclosure if that came out. So, yeah. Trying to enter the dimensions, communicate with the others. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, too much of it. And the bad stuff that Ricky Bobby made in his fucking bathtub, I think is what happened there with that buddy, that poor lad. But anyway, yeah, it definitely, I wouldn't say creeps me out. It does make me, it unsettles me to some degree, as we've had weird shit happen with us the last I don't know, year and a half. It's funny because I never had it happen before until I met my partner there. But yeah, that book bag thing, it was just on Friday. The book bag, I don't know if everyone was here to see that, but we had a book bag fly across the room. I wasn't here for this, but in the bedroom, and hit the wall. And it's like, and this is not uncommon, these little things happening, and many people have stories of these kinds of things occurring. So it's like, it would just open up a lot of strange doors. So, Swirl Bridge, the Rainbow Bridge. We're gonna go on the Rainbow Bridge. I mean, from like Thor, obviously, not the woke Rainbow Bridge. Yeah. Yes, sir. Finn, that was awesome. Yeah, man. I love these. I think they're great. Fuck, so great. And it's great just to hear from just, regular people that just, have nothing to gain, everything to lose in some way, right? With this kind of, these kinds of, admissions, right? Where it's like, it just in your mind, it solidifies again, like, fuck, this is so big. So it's huge. It's huge here, literally. Black Triangle. Yeah. But, fuck yeah, man. And on that note, I wanted to move over to, this. So, this was just posted 7 hours ago. Joe had on Diana Pasulka, who is a professor of religious studies. And he's having a talk with her. And, I've heard, she's interesting. Everybody has something different to contribute to this discussion, obviously. And, I think she's in philosophy, honestly. I think that's what she's in. A lot of people in philosophy end up in religious studies, right? Like researching into like ontological arguments about God's existence and whatnot. And I'm not too fond of that usually, unless it's pertaining to like, natural explanations for some fantastical things, right? The parting of the Red Sea maybe was a giant earthquake, not fucking Moses lifting his fucking staff. Maybe it was a UFO. I don't know. But anyway, yeah. That's his last name precisely because the ridicule factor is still very real. Yeah, well, that's the thing, man. Yeah, it is. It is. And people, working jobs, you don't want to pollute his LinkedIn, maybe. Fucking go right to his LinkedIn, fucking be like, oh, you fuck, bud. Big black triangles, huh, bud? And that won't look good on your LinkedIn, right? So, although maybe it will now. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe employers, we can't discriminate, though. That's the thing. Like, sitting in the back there, yeah, I see that. Yeah, or maybe they manipulated by China. I see that. That's Bobby Lee. Bobby Lee on that one. I'll play this here. Let's hear what they have to say. I got a couple minutes into it. I just initially listened to it when I was in the shower. So
The Joe Rogan
I
Experience.
love hearing Joe's voice when I'm in the shower.
What do you think the UFO phenomenon is?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, that there are a lot of different varieties of it. But when we look at, like we were looking at the Francis of Assisi and the kind of historical things and the abductions and things like that, I think that it's been around for a long time, and that these are things that are in communication with us. So I used what I do in my book, both the books that I wrote about this, is I talk to people who I think represent thousands of people. So each person in the book represents thousands, if not more, maybe many thousands of people who have had experiences and the ways in which they interpret them. So all of the people seem to have had experiences where now what they want to do is they actually want to work for justice in different ways. Like Jose, the veteran in my book, he's working with young people and helping them deal with being addicted to social media and things like that, and helping them get through life, which is really hard right now. And that's what he's doing. And then you look at Dr. Whiteley, right? So she's working in this space where she's trying to, help people deal with the fact that they're seeing things that, that could down planes and things like that. And she's helping people talk about that. She's helping people. Each person is somehow doing what I'm suggesting that I think is an out, this kind of structural injustice that we see. So I think that this is a transformational thing without the drugs, is what's going on. Like some kind of massive experience that people are having, and now it's getting out, and people are being able to talk to each other through Reddit communities and different types of social media. So it is it's we did see religion.
There's an awakening happening, Diana, and it's happening very gradually. It's been happening for some time. It's been happening pretty naturally, but it's getting to like a fever pitch, right? And the advent of the internet, and more recently with, I think, the government quasi acknowledging that, oh yeah, those military videos of those things are real, and we don't know what the fuck they are. Right? It's people are all starting to realize, oh, well, that literal mountain of anecdotal evidence of people saying they've been seeing these things for fucking maybe thousands of years. Oh, okay. Well, there's something to that. It's like, yeah, there is. And what does it mean? Well, it could very well mean that, it's just something we've been preparing for, that something's been trying to acclimate us to this, reality that we're not alone, and that it's very naturally, again, starting to kind of come together. And the hope is that we get an official admission, and then from there, maybe whoever's flying around decides to come down and have a chat.
When they become viral at one point. We've never seen it in an age where we have digital technology, but this is what we're seeing now.
What do you think the physical objects are?
Well, okay, so this is something that's very interesting. We just looked at the Shroud of Turin. I believe that there are these, I would call them, and this is just my own non-scientific term, interdimensional objects. They're objects that have characteristics of our dimension and some other dimension.
So,
Yeah,
some other dimension has the capability, or something from some other dimension has the capability of transporting a physical object into our realm.
Or even imprinting onto a physical object. Yeah.
How so?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that's
what does that mean, imprinting onto
So
a
with the
physical
Shroud of
object?
Turin, we see the imprint of, the image, and
If it's real.
yeah, if it's real. But
yeah, and again, like, I mean, I'm all for some religious fucking artifacts, right? But the Shroud of Turin, I don't know personally if it's one of them, but there's definitely with ufology, we see people kind of get lost in fantasy of things, and then some people who are very academically inclined and very scholarly kind of start to get involved with. There's a lot of very good scholars who are very deeply embedded within these different cults or religions. And they kind of start to get together, and like the idea of this magic is kind of starts to consume them, and and then they start to kind of believe, oh, well, maybe there is something magical about this. So there's something magical in this book, and I've always liked to look at claims like that as like, well, maybe there's like technological explanation to some of these relics mentioned. I don't know if we've recovered any. Maybe the fucking Vatican has some of them. But like the Ark of the Covenant is one that is very intriguing, which in all accounts sounds like some kind of terrible weapon. That also is like sounds radio fucking active. So like literally, like the stories of it speak of people literally having their hair, their nails fall out, they go blind, and then they develop these cankers, is what cancer was called back in times past. And they would just drop dead too. And so like that sounds like fucking radiation. So, that's, but we haven't found that. We haven't found the Ark of the Covenant officially. The Shroud of Turin, I don't know, man.
It's an anomalous object. So we do have, from Gary Nolan, engineered objects that we don't know how they're engineered, but they definitely look like they're, it's off planet. I would call the kinds of things that we see in the historical record interdimensional types of things. Now, how? I don't know, Joe. Okay, so I just don't know. But I do think that scientists in the government know that these things exist, and they would like to figure it out. And so part of disclosure, the disclosure movement, is outsourcing this and trying to get as many people as possible to help in figuring it out.
What do you think when they use the term donations? What do you think the purpose of that is? If there is an object...
Get fucking rich, Joe. What the fuck? Of course. Milk it. I don't know what he means by donations, though. I don't know if that's literally what he means.
Object that is purposely released into our... like I'm sure you're aware of cargo cults, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So with cargo cults, for people that don't know, there's been some islands during World War I and World War II where planes landed there and they left. And these people, they created these statues of these planes and they worshiped them. And they wanted them to come back. Yes.
Yeah, because they got food and all kinds of wonderful things from the planes.
Right. And
they thought of them as deities.
Right. The same way we would think of something from like somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that in my field has been called the cargo cult, the UFO cargo cult, right? And obviously...
And sorry, not to keep fucking pausing this, but there's too many interesting tidbits out of this. In regards to North Sentinelese and this cargo cult that's cropped up, it's extremely interesting, right? How that happened, and a lot of proponents of the ancient astronaut theorists suggest that we have instances of this same phenomena happening way, way back in other cultures. Native American tribes, speaking of this, African tribes, groups of people all over the fucking planet. It's endless. Speaking about these gods that came down and descended, right, with this, what sounded like technology, and then they enlightened the general public, right? They enlightened the people, right, with like agriculture, or mathematics, or astronomy, and then at some point they just kind of disappeared. And all that was left was their memory, this memory of them. So extremely interesting stuff. There was, I just saw a post on Twitter. I was going to try and find it here, but I don't know if it's of Quetzalcoatl or Viracocha, or it's one of these Mesoamerican deities, but he's propped up on his coffin, on his sarcophagus, I guess, There's a relief of him propped up, and this isn't Eric Von Daniken Chariots of the Gods meme, right? He started this, but it does honestly look like he is inside of some kind of a craft. It looks very clearly like some kind of technology that's been interpreted by an ancient people, creating this relief on his sarcophagus. But, there's a lot of interpretations I think are just bullshit too. But that is one, when you look at it, that is just like, I don't know how many other ways there are to interpret that other than this looks like technology. And there's tons of examples of this. And again, endless examples too. And the Inuit people in North America spoke of gods who came down and built these structures, which they still imitate to this day. There's a whole narrative up there I've covered on here before about them, and it's just fucking. And they were very specific those group of people, where they were like, no, like they came down and they didn't look like us. They had blonde hair and they were huge. They were giant people, and they taught us all this shit, and they moved these stones around somehow, and then they left. The Internet theory suggests Pumapunku Tiwanaku Titikaka. Oh, Galen TV. Galen knows my weakness. I have a weakness for David Childress on here that I fear the day I meet him. It might be very awkward and strange for David. David is my ASMR, so.
Tyler and James view these parts as donate. They called it the donation site, right? So giving it the idea
is that just one theory?
Yeah, that's just one theory.
Are there other theories that there's a biological organism that encounters a lightning storm and it actually crashes, and there's physical bodies?
Oh yeah,
that
there is that. Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
Going
What's
around.
your take on that? Because that's one of the things that Grush talked about, and some of the other people talked about, that there are biological things that have been recovered.
Well, what impressed me about what he said was that he used the term biologics. And I actually know that term because that's the same term that Tyler was talking about when he was creating materials in anti-gravity spaces on space shuttles and such. So I was wondering, because David Grush does get his information from people allegedly in the programs, but he's never seen these materials that I know of.
I think he has some firsthand experience that he was not able to talk about.
Okay.
That he's alluding to.
Okay.
I
Right.
think. But
Sounds like he told Joe that.
And he's been very careful about how he releases this information and what he's able to release and not able to release. And
Right.
that I was like, okay.
Yeah,
Really?
so I mean, I've not seen any bodies, nor have I seen intact craft, but I also have had. Now, remember, I don't have a clearance like he has, so I can actually talk about what people have told me. I have had people tell me that, yes, Diana, there are intact craft. I don't know. I mean, maybe.
I miss when Joe used to get way too fucking high, and then would end up almost trying to fight his guests. Those conversations were the best. He's toned it down quite a bit lately. I don't know. Those were good memories back watching his fucking podcast. Sorry, I'll continue.
So, I don't know, Joe.
Have you studied Bob Lazar?
Okay, yes, I am always asked about Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
And
This is
I don't
interesting.
know, but I can tell you that people that I've met who are associated with the programs tell me that he's right. Now I know his background, and I know all the things. I don't have an opinion one way or the other, but I can also say that a lot of times people with very disturbing backgrounds, who could be easily discredited, are given information and shown things and told things.
Well, I would think that that's sort of like a little escape clause.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is.
I mean, the guy's obviously a genius and was obviously a propulsion expert. He put a fucking jet engine on a Honda in like the 1980s. He's a
I know.
fascinating guy.
Yeah.
And, he claims that there's some element that exists in other places in the universe.
Joe, it's 115 or Moscovium as we now call it, but It was a stable version of what we synthesized in like an infinitesimally small amount of 115. And that it was maybe, well, I guess he speculated if it was like naturally stable somewhere else, but that's extremely interesting actually, because other people may not know this, but from some of her other interviews, she's highlighted that she has been involved with interviewing some people who are first-hand witnesses to this attack. So kind of like what James Fox has alluded to, she's been one of these people who've been talking with some of these first-hand witnesses who are due to come out any day now. So if those people on the programs have said these things that Bob was on the money, that's very interesting. I just think of all I know Bob's story inside and out. I know every fucking crevice of it. And it's very trippy. I mean, that's a huge ontological shock. I'm not going to ramble about it again, but if his story is 100% corroborated, and if for whatever reason he can come out, he's already confidently said that everything he said has been complete. I would assume there's been some stuff inserted in there maybe, but maybe not. I don't know. But the 115, how the craft functioned, where the crafts were from, very interesting. He had a reticuli. There's corroborative stuff there with other like accounts with abductees. And in the book that he was given at the government, but that is subject to maybe very possibly some bullshit inserted in there. But then again, maybe not. And it gets, again, crazy beyond like they genetically engineered us and the government was dealing with them and they gave the government crafts, but it goes down like the rabbit hole to like, oh, well, they helped prophets who incarnated on earth on their journey, like Jesus and others. It's like, oh, okay, like it goes, the whole thing that Bob read there, if his story is true, is just like, it's all in the woo. Like, and this is one of the things that like you do run into this. They're inseparable, unfortunately. At some point, it blends together. And it's inevitable that it will, because if you're dealing with a force that's this advanced, that's what it's going to end up sounding and looking like. The science might sound and look like woo, right? Everything, their philosophy, like their mathematics, like every part of this is probably to us going to sound like woo. It is something we're just going to have to contend with if this is all true.
It's me to believe, not even to believe, but like, so here's the question. Are some of these things from other planets? Is that also in the equation? I mean, just because something is traveling interdimensionally, we do know that there are an infinite number of planets in the universe. I mean, we have no idea how many of them are capable of supporting human-like life or some other kind of life or an infinite number of varieties of life. And if that life can do what we've done and get to some part of its progression where it's capable of creating what we're calling artificial intelligence or super advanced technology, why wouldn't it come here?
Yes, I'm not discounting ET.
So that could be there too.
I think so, especially because of the ways in which the materials are being manufactured off planet, like the ones that we just saw.
Mm-hmm.
And that was information when I met Tyler 2014, and now it's a full-on thing that's happening, right? So it's a supercharged program of creating things that will help us off planet. I mean, certainly then, yeah, I think so. I mean, but I don't know.
Right.
So I have to just be honest.
So it might be a bunch of different things happening all at the same time, interdimensionally, extraterrestrially, something from a distant galaxy that's figured out some new method of propulsion that's beyond our imagination that can visit, and then also things that are coming here from other dimensions.
Yes. And even recently, somebody had, I can't say anything. I can't say I'm sorry. I don't want to be that person that goes on your show and says,
it's
"Oh,
okay.
I can't say that."
I
but
understand.
I probably most likely there are if there's crash retrieval crash retrievals here on Earth, perhaps there are in space as well.
Do you, when they talk about inventions that emerged post Roswell, that's one of the points of speculation, is that we have back engineered something, and that this led to the creation of fiber optics and a lot of other technologies that seem to emerge after that time.
Yeah. So this question was prominent in my mind in 2012 when I met Jacques Vallée. So I was already aware of his work, even as a person who hadn't studied UFOs or even believed in them. Jacques Vallée is just one of these people, right, that you come across his work and he's fascinating. So I thought it was strange that not only was he a person who was,
Mars, maybe?
ARPANET, right? He was on ARPANET, which is pre-internet. He was
both
creating that at the same time as being obsessed with UFOs and doing, being a ufologist. These things seemed that they had to be together, right? There was something that, what's going on here? So, and I'm in touch with him often. And he says a lot of things that are rather cryptic, but sometimes I ask him specifically, was what you were doing on ARPANET related to back engineered UFO parts? And then he'd say something like, there are many secrets in Silicon Valley, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's real cryptic. He's kind of difficult to have a conversation with publicly.
Well, it does have a lot. I guess there are lots of secrets in Silicon Valley.
Of course.
Which is where he lives.
Yeah. Another thing that was really fascinating about your book was you were talking about how much religion he studied.
Yeah, I should say.
Yes.
So there was a great conversation that Joe had with James Fox. It was joined by Jacques Vallée on his podcast, but towards the end, Joe started getting fairly agitated with Jacques because he was unwilling to be specific. He was speaking very loosely, I guess. And he just absolutely refused to be more specific and to narrow in on what he was trying to get at. And it was being intentional. He was intentionally just being vague. And Joe didn't understand why. But it's one of these things where, Jacques, I would imagine, is one of these people with probably firsthand knowledge. Kind of like I would imagine Hal Puthoff is another person probably who has firsthand knowledge. It's real world shit. They probably know that people fucking killed over this. And these elements out in the world may still be active that are tapping them on the shoulder once in a while. Remember, don't fucking, kick this over on the world or it's going to be blood on your hands, right? Kind of deal. And as much as we'd like these figures to speak candidly on this, I think, again, there's just a reality. It's it just would very quickly kind of move from the realm of fun and educational, which is what Joe's shows is about, to just fucking dangerous. Right? So, anyway, with that considered, I would kind of understand maybe why Jacques being a little bit more vague.
That was really interesting. So in the book, what I do is I uncover not just him, but Alan Hynek. They were friends. And they were both Rosicrucians, which is a form of, he might not like me to say this, but it's a form of mystical Christianity in a sense. But a lot of Rosicrucians don't view their roots as Christian. They look at it as Egyptian, but it's an esoteric tradition, and it involves meditation. I think it most likely involves.
Oh, it involves a lot of stuff. It involves forbidden knowledge, actually. Some forbidden knowledge that maybe I've inadvertently shared here, knowledge of things like this. Yes. Knowledge that more specifically came out of Mesopotamia, not Egypt. And knowledge that some of these groups carried along from the Knights Templar, I might add, of potentially all kinds of wacky, crazy things. Again, like lost ancient civilizations and whatnot. But yeah, anyway, I'm not going to fucking go down that rabbit hole right now, so we'll just keep this going.
This thing that you and I have been discussing in the whole talk so far is the pineal gland thing, the access point, because both of them believe in this kind of life, this meditating and things like that. And so I included references. Everything I say in my books, by the way, I pass to the person that I'm writing the chapter about. So everything that I said about Jacques, I gave it to him beforehand, and I said, are you okay with me saying this publicly? And so it passed all the tests. And I also talk about going to his apartment and seeing his library, which is an amazing library. And he has stained glass from Chartres Cathedral. And Chartres Cathedral is a special place for Rosicrucians, like a special place of presence of the sacred. And he actually did those himself. So he learned how to do stained glass from people at Chartres, by the way. And yeah, just amazing. And he had a lot of books on angels and fallen angels in that library, like almost like it was almost like going into the Vatican archive, going into this place, because these look like first editions or close. So, really, really old books about the.
Now, there's another name that Diane should know what the fallen angels are referred to as, which is Nephilim, right? So, again, yeah, we'll get to this here in a second, but there's another narrative that crops up, right, with all this stuff, which is the idea of, these other people that were here in the past that would be considered extraterrestrials, I'm assuming, these fuckers here, which I always meme about. The Anunnaki, those who from heaven came down to earth, or the Nephilim were those who were sent down, cast down to earth, I guess, but whatever your perspective is, whatever game of telephone you're playing that day, I guess, right, when you decided to write that down, right? Which is essentially what you get to. But generally speaking, just a group of people that came down from the kingdom of heaven to earth. And I get into all the time about what I have my intuitions are, about what the kingdom of heaven actually represented and what it might be. But anyway, yeah, this shit. So, I'd heard that Jock was in, she's implying, I didn't know J. Allen Hynek was, which is what she was implying too, which is very interesting. But, these sects, they're kind of fucking cults, where they will sometimes kind of hoard this lost knowledge, like the Masonic fraternities are similar as well, made up of some of these kinds of, people, and had their origins in these belief systems. Like the Knights Templar were involved with the Masonic fraternities. And this is some of the forbidden knowledge that I am fairly certain they get to at some point along the way there, which hasn't really been lost to us, but kind of has been lost to us. Anyway, so yeah, very interesting. Yeah. I about Michael the other day. It might be coincidence, but I am getting a connect the dots feeling lately. Yeah, I remember I went over that here. Yeah, Hendrix. Yeah. Yeah, and it's, well, again, I got into this a couple times, but like, if they're going to find something on Mars, like, whose is it, right? Is it little gray people from Zeta Reticuli, or is it something very fucking different, right? Is it like people? And gone into, as much as remote viewing is not a fucking science or anything, but, there's been a couple instances of it, again, which is very spooky. And that's probably the best way of putting it, is that remote viewing is spooky. And one of the spooky bits of remote viewing was remote viewing that Joseph McMoneagle did, or Joe McMoneagle did, I guess, of Mars, right? And the connection between him and the military, the Navy, tasking that, and what he found there. So, I mean, and it connects very deeply with some of this stuff. And I've gone over as well some of the interpretations that Sitchin did. I thought that were, as I've sifted through Sitchin's stuff endlessly, because there was a lot of bullshit, that there was some interesting stuff he dug up out of ancient Mesopotamia, right? Ancient Sumer, some of these cylinder seals, which some of them are like Assyrian and shit and Babylonian, but maybe connecting to Mars. Like it gets that weird, and it's kind of all there in plain sight. What's missing for us are these like keys, right, that kind of prove it. And some of these sects, cults might have some keys that unlock the truth in these things, these seals, these artworks, these stories. And I have my own intuitions that probably there are groups of people that have these keys and unlock this. Maybe one of them, I would put a top contender, would be the Vatican for that. And that potentially those keys have unlocked this knowledge and they've realized definitively, oh, fuck. And, one of those keys may very well be some bodies. Some bodies that have been recovered that indicate very strongly that these stories in the past of these very tall, very technologically advanced humans that were traversing around the globe pretending to be gods weren't just stories. They were real, right? It was a reality. So that then opens up and begins to open up a whole other can of fucking worms here. And then from there, you get into other aspects of it, which is catastrophism. You get into the other stories associated with these beings, which is of cyclical catastrophes. And then you get into where they're from. And then, Sitchin, for all of Sitchin's faults, he was a good scholar. It's just, he wasn't the best at sourcing his material very well. And he was a little bit more creative than I think some people in the sphere would be. But he had his own connections with some very accredited people. And I will always defend him because I think his intuition was far beyond what many other scholars in the sphere have. I think that his imagination was what made him unique. And I think it allowed him to get very close potentially to the truth, maybe. And he had some very accredited people that he had become associated with. And he had made comments about this, that, there were groups of people in the world who were kind of aware of what he was talking about, essentially. And he'd even made comments that some of those people were not a fan of what he was uncovering. He had told stories where he was convinced that there were some hits put out on him and that he was in Egypt one time and he was convinced there was maybe someone trying to take his life, and that it was on a tour where someone had pushed something over and he's pretty sure the intention was to crush him. And someone had pulled him out of the way, if I can recall the story correctly. But that there were people who were not fond of what he was talking about. And again, this unfortunately gets into, like with ufology, kind of a deep conspiracy. But he had an association with a guy named Robert Harrington, who was a very accredited astronomer. He was the head astronomer at the U.S. Naval Observatory. And, he was involved with looking for this planet. And Sitchin had his own ideas about the planet, and the orbit may have been wrong, as it's just mathematically unstable. But, Robert Harrington would have known this, but he still worked with them because I think he saw clearly there was something going on with this stuff. Again, Robert Harrington, I think I must have had a fairly high clearance to do what he was doing. And he did pass away shortly after he went public and kind of expressed interest in Sitchin's side of the story. So, maybe some real world shit going on here again. So I think Blue Beam being an alien invasion, it turns into be a god or Jesus shit. That would be amazing. I can't wait to see how society would react if the psyop is the second coming out. Jesus Christ. Yeah, literally Jesus Christ. That'd be amazing to watch it go down. It just seems like a lot of religion stuff seems to be coming into the narrative lately. Maybe it's just me, but I have a feeling there's something going to tie in with the phenomena. Yeah, it's hard to say, man. Yeah, it's just metaphysical stuff cropping up, right? Yeah, and it's if they're going to try and turn it to something like literal, or if it's just them reverting back to in the face of something very confusing and disorienting, like the roots, things that they know and are comfortable with. Like people, when confronted with something very disorienting, will retreat back to their faith, right? Whatever that is. And that maybe that's what's going on, or maybe it is something, maybe it's kind of implying, like something legitimately metaphysical. Yeah. I got the Angel. Did I get that right? Wiljan, welcome. Yes, they did. Yes. And sorry, did you have to open this up here? Pentagon moves to declassify some secret space programs and technologies. So, some officials at the Pentagon have been calling for such a new classification policy for years. They want to declassify more space programs in order to, no, I don't want to sign up there, boost to the nation's military edge in space. Interesting. Space superiority. The question is if they're going to start declassifying some of this, super secret stuff that has to deal with life on other planets. I do want to pull this up here, although I know, listen, no one knows Jamie Masson as good as I fucking do. I've been following this motherfucker for too goddamn long, so I know some of the horse shit that he's been associated with. And I remember when we were watching here fucking live, those goddamn fucking mummies came out, and I fucking called it. I called that he was going to bring those goddamn things out. So, do I take this with a fucking bucket of salt? Yes. Does it pique my fucking interest? Fuck yes. They have just discovered giants in Peru. Haven't they now? Oh, speak up, Jamie. I can't hear you.
Como una exclusiva de este programa, que en Perú también se han encontrado gigantes, pero en este caso cuerpos.
They are bodies.
Es todo lo que voy a adelantar.
That's all I'm going to say.
Mucho más.
Yeah. Now, again, what I was just talking about earlier about forbidden knowledge here. Well, there's your giants, right? They're all over the fucking planet, everywhere. What's missing are the remains to prove this. Isn't just some fantasy, some story, but that these were actually people, real people. Now, we had this evidence, and, some people call into question some of these accounts, rightly so. There are too many in the United States, the turn of the 20th century, right? And before then, in the mid-1800s, there were, I don't know how many instances of this. Tons. I would say dozens of incidents at minimum. Right? They were published by accredited people, and they were finding these giant skeletons in what they thought were Native American burial mounds, but they weren't clearly not Native American. Native Americans weren't fucking 8 feet tall with red hair, right? And in some cases, 2 rows of fucking teeth, which is strange. We're dealing with some other kinds of people here, right? Like, we just watched the video on Neanderthals, right? This is in deeply speculative territory, obviously, but I would presume that's probably what we'd be dealing with. Anyway, tons of these bodies were found. And to this day, you can't find any of them on display anywhere in the United States. They're all gone, and they all went missing in the early 20th century, or like 1920, 1930. And a lot of them went to the Smithsonian, and then the Smithsonian doesn't know where they are. I would bet, this is conspiratorial of me, but that some of these groups of people, right, like the Rosicrucians, or maybe some people in these Masonic fraternities, these wealthy people, bought them up, right? Because they may have had some inside baseball as to who these people really were, right? Or the remnants of these people at the very least. You can supposedly, as I've heard through the grapevine, still see some of these remains, bits and pieces of these remains in some museums in the United States. There's supposedly a little museum in Arizona that has a huge human skull. you can ask to see it, but it's not on display. But they do have it. So the little bits and pieces, right? Some fucking femurs and shit that look like they're from someone who's like over 8 feet tall, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah. I do believe that we're a big world-shattering secrets that they think will break the world. All religions are actually from about ETs. Yeah, and it's important to note, Will, too. Yeah, I imagine the old Christian ladies would have a die-heart attack. Exactly it. And it gets complicated because, I mean, maybe there's some metaphysical shit going on in some of these religious accounts, which is what Diane's been pointing to. But many of the stories we hear about Nephilim or fallen angels, or you're dealing with not little gray people, but you're dealing with these people, big people. And I'll show you again. I've shown this picture of Inanna here, or Ishtar. There's your angels right there. That was when you go to church with your nanny this fucking Sunday. People still go there, and you look up and you see that big person up in the clouds, right? And then you see Jesus below him. Right? Okay, this is your inspiration for an angel, right? And here's all the boys up in the nimbus, the big cloud, right? There's the king up in the cloud, Anu, right, from Sumerian lore. There it is right there. That object being the cloud, the nimbus, or it's called the Andisk, or there's the wing disk. There's a bunch of different names for it. But anyway, this is what we're dealing with here, right? This is when you're dealing with, and it gets confused. And there are some metaphysical stories through some of these religious texts, like Ezekiel's one story that sounds like whack the fuck out, like modern UFO encounter. Whether that's actually what happened, but this, for the most part, you deal with fallen angels and whatnot, interbreeding with man, and you're getting a different story. You're getting this is your ancient aliens here. This is what ancient aliens beats around the bush about all the fucking time. But this is who the ancient aliens were, or who these people were. Supposedly, they claim in all instances were building all these megaliths, and this group of people in particular. And this interesting little tidbit here from Jamie is that, according to him and co, that they've found evidence of these giant people. Now, again, Central and Southern America has been for a long time a place of there have been tons of stories of giants down in these areas, and not just dead giants, but live giants. There were stories back in the 1600s when explorers were making their way down there that they had encountered these giant people. And there's stories about these Patagonia giants when they were down there. They had run into, and later, the guy's accounts were just written off as like he was hysterical or something, like he was starving or deficient in vitamins. And but he encountered, and it wasn't just him. There were many other accounts of this. Groups of people, they're humans, but they were huge. They were like all 8 feet tall, which is a fucking giant. If you've ever seen someone who's 7 feet tall, 8 feet tall is a legitimate fucking giant. So, especially if you're like thick, you're not just like some big tall skinny boy, right? Like, you're fucking legit. Laura, I've been saying it all a while now. Yeah, midget aliens don't work, so now we're trying giants. Sounds like. Well, listen, man. If they can wheel this shit out, well, this is the other interesting thing too, right? As opposed to the cake mummies, right? They'll be able to test the DNA in these motherfuckers real quick, right? We'll know real quick what the fuck's going on. You know, maybe they'll be able to paper mache their legs and stuff, make them look bigger than they actually fucking are. But this has me excited because there's a lot, and it's not very well known information though. Again, the stories about these giant people being discovered all over the eastern U.S. And stories of them all over the U.S., like the Asitika, right, that the Hopi fought with, these giant red-haired cannibals. They, again, huge, like 7.5, 8 feet tall, and the last remnant of them were killed in, I think, the mid to late 1800s. They were cornered in a cave, this last tribe of them, they're burned to death. And there's a picture, actually, of a woman, and this would have been taken probably in the, I don't know, early 20th century. and she was still wearing on her. She's a Native American woman. She was still wearing red hair, supposedly that her grandfather had taken from one of these giants that they killed. And that's an oddity in North America before settlers came over for these beings to have red hair. And it was one of the weird things about these Native American burial mounds, right? That the natives had red hair and were fucking like 7.5, 8 feet tall. Doesn't make any fucking sense. Going full Glother here, Jimmy. What's a Glarther, Galen TV? For it was like one of the HQs, apparently one of the hubs. Yeah, man. Well, yeah, it involved just all of Patagonia, right, man? Supposedly, there's rumors of these people. To this day, actually, I should say there are rumors that people see these people, but it's a little bit more wooey, I think, right? Harlem Globetrotters on tour. Yeah, look it up. What? Glarther. Is this a magic card, Galen TV? You're linking to me here? Oh my God. Yes. How would I? Oh yes. How could I forget? Shame on me. Yes. Yes. As I have the Oblivion music in the background. Yes. Him and yes. It lives in Skingrad. Attempt to enlist you, initiating the quest Paranoia. Oh, Christ. I do remember him, actually. Yeah. He's not quite as memorable as the Adoring Fan, but yeah. Holy fuck. Oh, God, Jesus. Yeah. Well, on that note, on that fucking note, where did this go again? Here we go. I'm excited to see what the fuck they're going to come out of this. What's going to come out of this. Again, might be a big revelation here. If that's the TLDR here for me, for the meme on this channel, is it's more than just little gray people. It's the narrative and the story is far stranger than that. It's closer to home. It's other groups of people here that are, again, you could argue, pretty obviously depicted in our past. The problem is we just don't have a lot of corroborating evidence to like prove that, they're 100%, not like real. Like, but there's tons of mention of them, at least as metaphysical, like literal alien beings. This is what they're depicted as. So maybe we'll be finding some giant people soon. But until then, everybody, until tomorrow night when I'm going to stream again. A little bit earlier as well. This wasn't very long tonight. It's kind of late, but I'll be on earlier tomorrow. So everybody, thanks for coming around. Thanks for hanging out. Good talking with everybody. And as always, sleep tight, because there might literally be fucking aliens under your bed and in your closet. Good luck.